Well, hello everyone, and today I'm going to be painting a pumpkin using acrylic. So I've got this little reference photo out in front of me on my iPad, and I'll be referring to that while I'm painting. And I am just starting off with, I'll start off with a little wash of some of this cobalt blue and brown oxide here. And I'm just gonna kind of have a gray, kind of tone the background with this gray here. So just to work that around and kind of leave a spot where you want to put your pumpkin like this. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I kind of want to leave that little area where I know the pumpkin's gonna go so that I can get, not that I have to worry because it's not oil, so it's not like it's going to keep blending as much as oil would, but I'm just gonna leave that there so that the orange will really pop on that white surface. So I can sketch in the pumpkin using some of this transparent red oxide, and I use golden acrylic paint. I like golden paint, and it's really high quality, so I tend to want to use something like that. If you use the cheap paint, your paintings just won't get that radiant glow that people want. So you'll kind of get frustrated, especially with colors like yellow. If you buy a no-name brand sort of paint, you're going to get really weak yellow paint, so you won't be able to paint a sunflower the way you want it to turn out, and it makes it 10 times harder. So even if you don't buy a lot of colors, at least buy the primary colors in a brand like Golden, and even like Liquitex is pretty good too. You can get those online or at your Michael's store. So I'm just kind of blocking this in, and this is a lesson I'm doing for my Patreon members, so it'll be up on Facebook for a little while, but then it'll go down, and then for $10 a month you can join my Patreon and get access to all these little simple kind of fun lessons. So now I'm going to get some of this brown oxide, and I'm going to put my brush down and just sort of make that little stem. And this is a number 6 flat Princeton Summit brand. So then I'm going to I can start at this point doing a little shading. I can put in the ground around the pumpkin a little bit, get some of this brown oxide, and just put some of those marks to show that there's some hay kind of around it. I mostly want to keep it simple. This is a great little exercise if you're new to acrylic painting or new to painting. You could do this in oil. Same way I would paint it the same with oil. So you can leave that kind of brushwork for the kind of grass around it. Now when I switch from oil to acrylic, I sometimes use too much water because I'm used to using oil paint, which is a little harder to move around. So I'm just going to dab a little bit of that water off because it's too much. And so now I've kind of got my basic composition done. And by the way, I'm working on, this is just some canvas paper from Michael's. So I'm using that. It's a good thing when you're starting out to use, something like that, so you don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to have to make a perfect painting each time. And, you can frame, if you really make something that you like, you can frame it either way. So I've got a little cad red light out here, And I'm just kind of mixing that in with some orange and a little brown oxide just to get that darker orangey color. And I'll put a bit of that there, where there's a bit of shadow in the reference photo there. And just sort of, I'll mark out some of those lines. So just using a little orange and cad red and some of that transparent brown oxide. Sometimes I can't paint and talk at the same time. So I've just kind of marked out a few of those darker spots, but it's really important that you get the bottom of the pumpkin in nice and warm and dark. So I've got out some alizarin here. I'm going to add some of that and get that nice, warm, kind of a reddy color that you see in the shadow. So I'll put that in. You want to get it, you want to squint down and, look at your reference photo. And this is a simple kind of one subject still life as it, kind of one item in it basically. So you can really concentrate on learning the basics of light and shadow and light and dark values. So when you're looking at the pumpkin, you want to really pay attention to that shadow and squint down and just see how dark the darkest point is so that light really shows here. So once you get that in there, you can even add a little more alizarin, a little more orange, a little bit of that brown oxide, and get that in there nice and dark. Sometimes you can add a little dab of Viridian, and that'll really give you that darkest dark area. Yeah, I added a little spot of Viridian to that. So you kind of build that shadow area up. I like to kind of go from dark to light. And, you can go back in and make sure you've got that area. So you can sort of see I'm building that shadow on this side and the light on that side. So now I can get some orange and I can start adding some of that lighter orange color into that. I apply the paint fairly thick so it kind of blends in the way almost like an oil painting would. So I'm just going to add some of that kind of that pure orange in there, and then I'll go back to that puddle of dark shadow color and just sort of use that to kind of blend in that edge there. So you're just sort of getting that in there. If you lose some of the darkness, you can go back with the same colors, the alizarin and the transparent brown oxide and a little bit of orange, and just kind of go back into it. And then you've got these little bits of darker areas around the little stem here. So we'll put those in. And just sort of build back that shadow. And then I'll put a few of those little stripes in there to show some of the detail. Then I'm going to leave that for a little bit and go to the stem. And I'm going to just put in a little bit there, some more paint, and kind of settle that into the pumpkin a little more there. Okay, so now I'm going to add a bit of light. So I'm going to use this yellow ochre here and a little orange. And that creates sort of a nice kind of pastel orange. And just sort of put in a few of those lighter strokes for that highlight. Add a little more yellow ochre. And you don't really need to add any white to the mix because the yellow ochre has enough white in it. So I'm adding a little bit of that edge of light on that one side there. And it kind of gets a little lighter up here. Just kind of mix up a little different, add a little bit more orange as it comes around here. It gets less pastel. So just sort of blend in that. And then get more yellow ochre as you come to the front again. And kind of get some of that back in there. Now I can see if this is dried up a little because I want to go and get a little more shadow in there. Might add a little ultramarine blue in there just to get it a little darker. And kind of get that dark edge back in here. And then I just sort of blend the edge a little. And now I can go back to the stem and just add a little bit of that, more of that yellow ochre and a little bit of white just to give that kind of edge of that stem a little bit of a highlight there. And then I'm going to add some of that brown, just that brown oxide. I might have to darken it a little with some of this. I'll add a little bit of that Payne's gray in there because oil paint I can get a lot darker quicker. So on this, I'm just going to use some Payne's gray and some of that brown oxide to get it darker. So get that shadow kind of in there. And kind of, you can bring a bit of that around the front here. Take a little bit of that and just put a little in there so it really gets that to settle in a bit more. And then you can get some of that yellow ochre and white and put a few lighter strokes to show some of that grass, that hay that's kind of sitting below a pumpkin like you see at the pumpkin patch. So you wouldn't be able to do that unless you've got a little bit of that dark underpaint there. So that's why I got that in there first, because you want to show off the little bits of hay, which I think is kind of fun because when you go to the pumpkin patch, you get to see it. And I'll drag a few pieces up over that edge of that pumpkin there just to really show it off. And I can add more white and maybe this little bit of Indian yellow and get a few strokes that really kind of pop out a bit more. So you get even more layers. of that texture. And then now that you've got all that going on, you can go back and you could paint the background. There's some green grass in the distance there that you could put in, or just leave it. I kind of like that gray background, so I might just leave that like that. But I'll put a little bit more of a highlight here on there. And now I can go and put a little highlight on my pumpkin. So I'm going to go get that orange, and I'm going to add a little bit of that cad red light to it to create kind of like a coral color here. And I'm going to add a bit of a highlight to that edge. Add a little more white and a little more orange. And just sort of add a bit of a little bit of light coming from that side there. Once you get those highlights on, you can go get a little bit of that same color that we mixed earlier, a little bit of that yellow ochre and orange, and just sort of one tone between this and this, so it kind of looks more blended. I'm adding a little bit of an in-between value there. And then I'll get some of that orange and yellow ochre. Just put a little bit of light up here on the tops of where the pumpkin sort of curves inwards. You get a bit of that light hitting the edge of the before it kind of dips down into the stem a bit. So now you can sort of get a little bit better idea of how you get that shape, you know, and it's coming out a bit more. I can now use my number 4 flat here and get a little bit of that alizarin and some of that transparent red oxide, and sort of using my brush sort of bring up some of that warmth coming from the shadow there, and bring up a few of those details from the bottom, and it also will kind of darken around the base of the pumpkin a bit there. Add a little tiny bit of that Payne's gray to this area so it can get it even darker. And that kind of also gives a little more dimension. So you could, get some, we could just try putting in, some viridian and let's see, some of this yellow ochre, and making a little bit of a kind of grayish green background. You can try it out a little bit around here just to see if you like it, but that could be an idea, just to give it that idea that there's some green in the background, and I'm leaving some of that background color through because I like it. But yeah, that kind of looks good because it looks good with the green. So now we can kind of look at what we got here. I like to peel off and see what we got. So this was a fun little demo and kind of gets you in that fall spirit. And I did a lesson in oil for a pumpkin and a raven this month for the higher tier. So I thought I would do this for my Patreons at the $10 level so that they can also have fun and enjoy painting something like this for their just for learning and just, you know, to relax and enjoy it. So thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.